The 2021 Mortal Kombat reboot managed to bring the franchise back to life on the big screen, leaning fully into the R rating and delivering fights that finally felt like the game's critics were split, but it put the brand back on the map and set a new tone for everything moving forward. Now the team is stepping things up in a big way, and the sequel looks bigger, meaner, and a lot more intense. This time Earthrealm champions are heading into an actual tournament, and they're bringing in Johnny Cage, played by Karl. The stakes are way higher, with the heroes going up against the forces of Outworld under the brutal rule of Shao Kahn, played by Martin Ford. The roster is expanding, but the core cast from the first movie is back too, including Cole Young, the original character created specifically for the films and again played by Lewis Tan. While talking to Comic Book, Tan said the sequel is going to be far less predictable. According to him, nobody is safe this time. The filmmakers even shot several different endings where different characters died just to prevent leaks. Tan explained that the team kept shuffling the story around, and that sense of uncertainty stayed in the final cut. There will be a lot of deaths in Mortal Kombat 2, and some of them will definitely hit longtime fans. He also pointed out that in this universe, death doesn't always mean the end, but the emotional punches are real, and the reactions from fans will definitely be mixed. In the first movie, Cole Young was the franchise newcomer, an MMA fighter who slowly uncovered his connection to Hanzo Hasashi, the legendary Scorpion played by Hiroyuki Sanada. He was basically the audience's guide into this new version of the MK universe. But in the sequel, Cole steps back to make room for a louder, flashier presence like Johnny Cage. Even so, Tan said his character still gets an important moment. Cole has one of the most brutal and visually wild fights in the entire sequel, filmed in a location fans of the games will instantly recognize. The set itself looked incredible, and the shoot for that one fight took nearly 3 weeks, which is massive for a single action sequence. Tan said the choreography in this scene feels nothing like the first movie. There are new moves, fan-favorite special attacks, and a heavier focus on how Cole's arcana has evolved. In the last film, he was just starting to tap into his abilities, but now we get a full showcase that longtime fans will definitely appreciate. At New York Comic Con, Ed Boon and Karl Urban both said the sequel is shaping up to be a real blockbuster, and Urban even compared the jump in quality to the leap between the original Mad Max and Fury Road. Boon doubled down and said straight up that this isn't a cash grab. For him, this is about finally giving fans the live-action Mortal Kombat they've been waiting decades for, and you can feel that shift everywhere. The first movie had its charm, but the pacing and story structure didn't breathe. It threw a mountain of characters at us, but never let any of them leave a mark. Even the decision to build everything around Cole Young ended up being the most divisive part of the whole reboot. He wasn't awful, he was just there, a placeholder, a tour guide through the MK universe, instead of a fully formed character. Fans spent 3 years saying the same thing Boon finally admitted out loud. Johnny Cage should have been the face of the movie, and now that Urban is officially stepping into the role, the sequel suddenly feels like it has a center of gravity. That's why MK2 feels like a do-over, but not in a reboot sense. More like the Warners listened to every complaint and decided to fix all of it at once. Jeremy Slater, who wrote the script, even joked that if the movie had dropped this year, it probably would have been the best action movie of 2025. Since it's coming in 2026, he says it just takes that crown for the next year instead. Bold, but after the trailer, I kinda get why he said it. What the sequel absolutely needed was focus. And this time, the tournament, the literal foundation of the franchise, is finally happening, not teased, not hinted, not postponed for part 3. We're getting it now. From what the creators have said, the fights won't be shoved into the last 20 minutes either. They'll be spread across the whole story, kind of like milestones pushing Earthrealm toward either a win or a full-blown catastrophe. And since we're talking lineup, the roster this time is straight fan service in the best way. Jade, Sindel, Katana, Baraka, and the resurrection of Sub-Zero as Noob, a move that lines up perfectly with classic MK lore, but the way the script apparently uses them is the real upgrade. Instead of one-scene cameos, these characters finally get space to exist, interact, clash, build rivalries, and actually feel like their game counterparts. This darker direction lines up with something else too, the arrival of Quan Chi. Played by Damon Harriman, he's easily one of the heaviest hitters in a lore. He's the mastermind who bends the timeline, manipulates heroes into becoming villains, resurrects fighters as revenants, and quietly influences every major event across the series. He's expected to be Shao Kahn's personal sorcerer, the guy who can drag dead fighters back into the war. And if they really go for it, we might see the Revenant storyline finally enter the movies. Undead versions of classic characters corrupted by his magic. The obvious candidates are Max Huang's Kung Lao and Joe Taslim's Noob. Now, about those delays. People worry every time a blockbuster moves, but this is Hollywood right now. Everything's shifting. Beyond the Spider-Verse is pushed, the Batman 2 hasn't even started shooting, and half the major studios are rearranging calendars like it's a game of Tetris. Mortal Kombat 2, sliding from October to May, wasn't ideal emotionally, but strategically it makes sense. Warner Studios had already filled their 2025 slate and needed something big for the next year. And since MK2 is pretty much done, they can keep polishing and marketing without having to rush. But the delays didn't stop fans from worrying. If the first movie left people divided, the sequel is entering the ring with sky-high expectations. Mortal Kombat has always been a giant in gaming culture, and yet Hollywood adaptations kept treating it like something disposable. The 2021 reboot was a step forward, but it wasn't the knockout it wanted to be, and with R-rated hits like Five Nights at Freddy's proving you can make serious money even with a harsher rating, MK doesn't have any excuses this time. The audience is older, hungrier, and way more invested in the lore than they were in the 90s. They want something that feels like it understands the franchise, not something that waters it down for newcomers. That's why Mortal Kombat 2 feels like a turning point. If it hits, this series could explode into multiple sequels and spin-offs. Quan Chi is just one of those big chess pieces that can connect storylines for years, and with characters constantly dying and resurrecting, the possibilities are endless. When you put all of this together, the scope, the lore, the new characters, the tournament finally happening, the sequel looks like the first true attempt at building a long-term Mortal Kombat saga on the level fans have always dreamed of. The cast is stacked. The world feels alive, and the creative team keeps insisting this is their chance to correct every misfire of the reboot and craft something definitive. MK has insane potential, especially right now. It could honestly turn into something like a grown-up version of MCU, packed with brutal fights, real stakes, and characters who actually die, but all of that depends on execution. It needs strong storytellers and a clear creative vision. There's a lot of hope that the sequel will fix what didn't quite work the first time around, because that first movie often felt tight and rushed, with way too much happening in just a handful of locations. Even director Simon McQuoid admitted this was one of the biggest problems and promised they'd fix it.